The story starts off when Jennifer Pan and her parents immigrated to Toronto for a better life. Jennifer was a straight A student all the way until the 8th grade. That's when she thought she would become valedictorian, but when she didn't, she decided that school is not worth trying if she's not going to get the acknowledgement she thought she deserved. From then on, she began failing high school and changing her report card so that her parents won't find out. After high school, she faked a college acceptance letter, telling her parents she would accept and go to college when in reality, she didn't graduate high school. Since she lived with her parents, she would pretend to go to class every morning, but instead go to a friend's house or go to the library where she would copy down fake notes to show her parents what she was learning. After 2 years of fake college, she told her parents she would transfer to the University of Toronto where she would live with her friend Topaz. Until one day when her parents decided to call Topaz to ask about Jen, and Topaz told them Jen is not living with her. When she came home that night, her parents confronted her. You won't believe what happened next. This girl hired a hitman to get rid of her parents because they were too strict. Part 2. Sorry for the wait. After confessing that she has been lying to her parents for over 4 years, they forgave her on the condition that she goes back to high school and gets her education. But they also restricted her more, no longer allowing her to use a cell phone or laptop and making her cut ties with her only close friend named Daniel, who had helped her deceive her parents for all this time. This is when she really began to despise her parents. Later that night, Jen met up with one of her old friends, and as they were talking, her friend mentioned that she sometimes wishes her parents were gone. This got Jen thinking, and later that night, she decided that the only way for her to escape her parents' rule is to get rid of them. Eventually, she began talking to Daniel again, who told her he knows a guy nicknamed Homeboy who can get rid of her parents for $10,000. She accepted the deal, and Homeboy began stalking her parents. On November 8th, she texted Homeboy and told him to do the job once her parents got back from work. This story gets so much crazier, but no more waiting because part 3 is out now. This girl hired a hitman to get rid of her parents because they were too strict. Part 3. You're not ready for this. Later that night, her dad, who was tired from working, went upstairs to sleep while her mom sat downstairs in the living room watching TV. Jennifer then texted Homeboy and told him the go signal would be when she turns her bedroom light off. She then went downstairs to the living room to say goodnight to her mom, unlocked the front door, and went back upstairs and turned off her bedroom light. At that moment, Homeboy and 2 other guys entered the home, brought down Jen and both her parents to the living room, and tied them all up. They then began yelling, asking them where's the money while holding them at point to make the parents think that it was a robbery. As they yelled, the parents continued to beg them not to hurt their daughter, not knowing that she was the one behind all of it. After scaring them, they took both her parents down to the basement, where they sent 2 rounds into her dad and 3 into her mom. After scaring them, they took Jen back upstairs and both parents down to the basement, where they emptied 2 rounds into the dad and 3 rounds into the mom. The 3 hit and then quickly ran away as Jen called the cops, claiming that they had been robbed. Part 4 is out now. This girl hired a hitman to get rid of her parents because they were too strict. Part 4. But what she didn't know was that the hitman had actually failed. Although her mom unfortunately passed away, her dad survived and crawled out of the basement and onto the street, where he began yelling for help. Jen could not believe her eyes as she saw her dad through her window running out into the street calling for help before collapsing. At this point, many of the neighbors had woken up due to the commotion and have called the cops after seeing her dad's condition. When the emergency services finally arrived, they rushed her dad to the hospital, where he fell into a coma, and took Jen in for questioning. They ended up releasing her as they had no reason to be suspicious. But only 3 days later, her dad ended up waking up from the coma, and he remembered everything. He told police that as the hitmen were tying them up in the living room, he remembered Jen having a casual conversation with one of the hitmen as if she already knew him. They took her in for questioning again, where she tried to tell them that she hired the hitman for herself, and due to a miscommunication, they targeted her parents instead. Obviously, no one bought this, and she ended up receiving an automatic life sentence. These 2 insane parents tried murdering their 6 kids multiple times. The 2 parents, Sarah Barras and Brandon Machine, lived with their 6 kids in South Yorkshire. The story begins when their family dog disappeared and they suspected their neighbor had taken him. That is when they decided to attempt to murder the neighbor, but thankfully they failed. After their failed murder attempt, they began to worry that the police might one day catch on and take all their kids into foster care. So they decided the only solution is to murder all 6 of their kids. And so later that night, before their kids went to bed, they gave their 4 youngest children ADHD pills in hopes that they would be poisoned and die overnight. Early next morning, Brandon Machine went to work and Sarah went into the kids' bedroom to check on them. She was shocked to see that all 4 kids had survived and none of them were affected by the pill. Now upset that the plan hadn't worked, she immediately called her husband Brandon to tell him that the plan had failed and began researching online for different ways to murder her kids. What she did next is unforgivable. Episode 2 coming tomorrow. These insane parents tried murdering their 6 kids multiple times.